Hi guys, welcome again. This week we're going to be talking about fasting. So before I begin, if you could please press the red button to subscribe, that would be great. So fasting. There's been a lot of discussion about fasting recently, particularly, it's creating a wide kind of public perception and knowledge of this. But it's really quite important to talk about because fasting has some huge benefits, but there's also some major red flags around fasting as well. So let's sort of get into some general kind of points about it and then okay, so fasting. Obviously fasting is to go without food. So a lot of the kind of literature now which is coming out says there's huge benefits from taking a period of abstinence from food. So the reason why that appears to be the case is it enables the digestive tract to repair and recover. It obviously allows any food that's in your system to be fully processed, and then there's another element as well in the fact that it gives you some sort of mental resolve and realization that you don't need to be fully connected and eating every couple of hours. So personally, I've done fasts of 2 days. I've done fasts of 16 hours, and I've done fasts that are 12 hours and 18 hours as well. So there's a variety of different ways you can approach this. Some people, when they fast, they like to do a daily fast where they, which is then called intermittent fasting, where you would do a 16-hour window with no food and an 8-hour window of food. So typically what that would look like is you'd wake up in the morning having fasted overnight, obviously because you're asleep, and then you wouldn't eat again until around 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, where you'd have your food. So with intermittent fasting, what tends to happen is, because you've got a very short window to eat, you typically only have 2 meals, so you have a shorter amount of calories, and this then aids some level of weight loss. What it can also do is it can give your digestive tract time to recover, especially if you've got inflammation and digestive problems. If you've got slight intolerances to, say, gluten or dairy or nuts or seeds or something like that, then the digestive tract gets some time to recover, the inflammation can come down, and then it can be more efficient in processing foods you can have. So there is a benefit for fasting from that perspective, and I've certainly used it in that way. So intermittent fasting is a short window where you're allowed to eat, and outside of that 8-hour swing, you don't eat any food. That 16 hours is off. There are other means to do this. There's a complete fast, which is what I've done before, where you do a 24-hour window or a 48-hour or even a 72-hour in some extreme cases, where you don't have any food. And that's a very different kind of process, because that becomes more of a mental kind of hurdle that you overcome, because in the first day you obviously feel hunger when you normally would, breakfast time, lunchtime, dinner time, you do feel hungry, and certainly when other people are eating around you, you do feel like that. But once you get through that first day, in the second day you still feel fine, you still feel good, you don't feel like your energy levels are low, you don't feel terrible, you don't feel like hunger is gnawing at you. And then you sort of have this very odd moment with food where you realize that you don't need to eat all the time. It's quite empowering because it sort of removes that process, and it's a great position to be in. But with the longer fast, it's really important the way you break your fast, because once you come back to food, there's a tendency to then overeat, to then reward yourself by eating huge amounts of food. You don't want to do that. What you want to do is make sure the food you're having is the right balance. So you don't want anything that's got too much actually nutrients in it. You don't want anything that's too rich. What you want is something quite simple and straightforward, that's a small meal that you can sort of break into your system and allow your metabolism to come back online. So something, say, like a stew, or something like a small, very relatively plain meal would be a great start point. There's mental issues around fasting because it gives you permission not to eat, and that can be bad, because there's a number of people who use food as a way to punish and reward themselves, and those people really need to be careful with fasting. So let's deal with the people who punish themselves. So there are people who will use food to sabotage themselves. They'll eat food when they feel bad. They'll use food as a means to kind of put them in a worse place. And equally, there are people who will turn around and go, I've had a great day, I feel great, I'm going to go and have this. And when you reward or punish yourself with food, it causes a wider problem, because once you then remove food as that reward punishment system, you're then either going, I'm denying myself, or you're going, I deserve this. And that then creates the wrong mental attitude around what you're trying to achieve. Because yes, you can use fasting to lose weight, but that shouldn't be its primary goal. Fasting has huge benefits for cancer identification within the body, because when you're not eating food, your system becomes aware that it's no longer getting any sustenance. So it begins identifying cells which it doesn't need for cell autophagy, which is where it kills off the old cells and replaces them with new ones. And cells that could be cancerous are cells that get identified in this process. Equally, it's quite beneficial for certain illnesses to go for a fasting period, because it can starve off the bacteria that are feeding off of the food you're bringing in. So it enables the system to sort of cleanse. It can have quite a good mental benefit in terms of creating discipline and creating a different relationship around food, where you don't feel so tied into eating all the time. So these are benefits for fasting, but as I said, it's not for everyone. There are certain people when it's not necessary to go into fasting. So if you're around people who are going on about the benefits of fasting, consider whether it's actually something that you want to do and something that would be beneficial for you before you go into it. Don't just jump in with 2 feet and assume that because other people are doing it, it's the right thing for you. Fasting is not for everyone. There are benefits to it, but it's about understanding why you're doing it and what benefit you want to get from it. And it shouldn't just be about losing weight. That can be a side effect, but that shouldn't be the main goal. You can actually run quite well at maintenance off of fasting if you get your fasting window correct, and if you get the intake of calories correct at the other side in the window for the feeding. So lots of different things about fasting there, guys. I know it's quite a confusing subject. If you want to ask me any questions, do drop me an email and I'll answer them in a bit more detail. Once again, thanks for subscribing, and I'll see you next week.